Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
You guys can do a little bit better than that. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
All right. Thank you so much. On behalf of our Dean, Chris Brancalini, and the entire staff at the William H. Hannon Library, welcome. Welcome to the 2025 edition of LMU Speaks. My name is Ray Andrade. I serve as LMU's librarian for student engagement, but for tonight, I serve as your humble host. So before we begin tonight's event, just a little bit about LMU Speaks for those of you who are not aware of the event. So LMU Speaks is an annual storytelling program that started here at the library back in 2017. It's based off of a model first developed at Mill Valley Library called Naked Truth. Each year, we select at least one student, one faculty member, one staff member, one administrator, and even this year, for the first time, one alumnus, to all come together and tell a story around a central theme. Award-winning American author Ursula Le Guin had the following to say in her meditation on the power of speech. She said, quote, "Words are events. They do things, change things. They transform both speaker and hearer. They feed energy back and forth and amplify it. They feed understanding or emotion back and forth and amplify it," end quote. Storytelling is elemental to any society, and the library is a place where stories should be shared and preserved. And like libraries, stories possess the potential to broaden one's worldview, to break down biases, inspire change, and establish new connections that can be both personal and universal. We hope that tonight you will make a connection with someone new, and therein lies the goal of LMU Speaks, to foster connection. Now a word about this year's theme. As I mentioned, each year we select a theme for our storytellers. This year's theme is putting the pieces together, stories that build, stories that bridge, and stories that bring us together. We have 6 speakers this evening who will speak to that theme. Dr. Henry Ward, Dr. Nathan Sessoms, Olivia Rodriguez, Patrick Furlong, Kamzi Anzaribe, and alumnus and former LMU Speaks speaker, Makeen Yassar. At this moment, I'd like to formally introduce the first speaker, Dr. Henry Ward. Dr. Henry Ward is currently Assistant Dean and an instructor for the Intercultural Practicum at Loyola Marymount University. He was formerly Project Director for the Anti-Defamation League's A World of Difference Institute. He has consulted nationally and internationally for public and private agencies on cultural consciousness and a variety of diversity issues. He is a facilitator and mediator for the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office of Dispute and Resolution and a number of other governmental agencies. He has been honored as the LMU Barbara Bonney Staff Member of the Year, the Jesuit Association of Student Personnel Administrators recipient for his commitment to diversity and social justice, and he is also a previous recipient of LMU's Hidden Heroes Award. Can you please help me welcome Dr. Henry Ward?
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. First of all, thank you for giving me a doctorate. I really appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. And I'd just like to say thank you, Ray. Besides the doctorate, thank you for your dedication and your commitment to this program. I know you're standing in for someone who couldn't be here. And you've done it before, and I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I wanted to thank you for that. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Henry Ward. I am Assistant Dean, Ethnic and Intercultural Services. My job is to encourage the collaboration among the various cultures at LMU. And we define culture as your design for living and your patterns for interpreting reality, which means everybody has culture. The way I explain it to students, you know, when you're about 4 or 5 years old, and absolutely confident that the world revolves around you, Mom and Dad takes you to this awful place about 3 or 4 blocks from your house, where you have to learn to do awful things like share and play by the rules and respect other people. It's absolutely horrible for about 2 weeks, and then you begin to internalize the culture of the institution, the culture of the school. At LMU, you know, interculturalism is who we are, not necessarily what we do. I was honored to be a part of tonight, putting the pieces together. I was a little reluctant, but Rhonda gave me a little email and said, "Henry, you promised you'd do it." and here,
Lovingly.
Lovingly. And here I am, and I'm glad I said yes. I see so many familiar faces, and it's good to see my daughters here. My good friends are here. I had no idea they were coming. Threw me off a little, but I'm back on track now. I'm back on track. But I love this work. I've been at the university for 28 years. I know what you're thinking. How does he look so young? And I thank you for your thoughtful comments. But you know, 28 years is a long time. You know, and there've been two things that really kind of keep me here at the university. One is the students. Two is the work. You know, I love pouring into students, and I thought that was my gift, and it is to a certain extent. But what I really, really enjoy most is how they pour into me. It's twofold, you know, and I think I have learned probably more from them than they have learned from me. I'd like to sort of split my story into three sections. The personal, the professional, and then the last section is sort of my bucket of gratitude. I was born and bred in South Central Los Angeles, and I love everything LA. I love the Dodgers and the Angels. I love the Lakers and the Clippers. I love the Rams and the Chargers. Anything LA, I love. I went to 66th Street School. I went to Edison Junior High School. And I went to Fremont High School, Gold Pathfinders. Our motto was, "We'll make a way out of no way." I love the experience. I loved it all. I was raised by my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather. Now, my grandmother was a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful woman. And she was the head chef at J.J. Hagedy's, which was a big department store in downtown Los Angeles. Back in the day, they had these big palatial buildings, and they were department stores, and most of them had restaurants within those department stores. And my grandmother was the head chef at one of them. Now, she started out as a dishwasher there, and she worked her way up. One day, the chef, you know, didn't show up, and my grandmother sort of stepped in for the chef that day, and they tasted her culinary delights, and she quickly rose within that organization to become the head chef. I remember my grandmother used to come home, and as soon as she'd cook all day. As soon as she got home, she'd put on her apron, and she'd start preparing dinner for the family. We'd eat. She'd make sure that I got my homework, and she'd make sure that I got my bath, I could watch TV, and then I went to bed. My grandmother was my everything. Beautiful sense of humor. She was all that I needed. And I tell you, it really hurt my heart when she passed away. They say that angels couldn't be everywhere, so God made grandmothers. And my grandmother was my angel. Now, my grandfather, on the other hand, was probably the smartest man that I know. He graduated elementary school, but he went no further. But he could answer every question that I had. He was my old school Alexa. The way that I asked Alexa questions, that was my grandfather back in the day. And no matter what I asked him, he had the answer. He was in the Masonic temples, and he rose to the 33rd degree and was Grand Master of Prince Hall Masons. He loved that. And he was also an entrepreneur. My grandfather had cleaners, H&H cleaners. And I can remember I used to ride with him. Back in the day, he would drive to pick up clothes from his customers. And he would clean them and he would return them. He also had a couple of celebrity customers. One was the Raelettes, and they were the background singers for Ray Charles. And I loved going with him to get those costumes because they were just so beautiful and just like bedazzled and everything. I loved that. But his second celebrity customer was the Jesuit community here at LMU.
Oh, wow.
We used to drive down Manchester, and my grandfather had a big station wagon. And I remember sitting in the back bed, just shifting, sliding from side to side. And that was before they had the seatbelt restrictions. So it felt so wonderful and so good. But we would turn right there on Loyola, and he'd drive right up to the residence halls. He would get the robes, he would clean them, and then he would bring them back. I remember when I told my granddad that I'd gotten a position here at LMU. It was like, wow, you have made it to the big time.
Wow.
He was so proud of me, and I was so proud of my granddad. They say if you work at something that you really enjoy, it's really not work. And I've had the opportunity to have some wonderful careers. They say you'll have 4 careers and maybe a lot of jobs, but 4 real careers. It started for me with the LA Unified School District. I was a substitute teacher, and I loved doing it. I would go from school to school, and it was fine for me because I didn't have to get bogged down in any of it. I was just back and forth. One day, I got a call and they asked me if I'd go to Marlton School for the Deaf. And I was like, wow, deaf folk, okay, I'll go. But I started, I got sort of a soft heart, and I get sentimental, and I kept thinking, wow, I go there, it's gonna be really, really quiet, kids gonna be sitting, I don't know if I can take that. I walked into the classroom. These kids were everywhere, and they were communicating with each other. They were back and forth, and I was like, what? This isn't the way deaf people are supposed to act in my mind. But I quickly realized that they weren't the ones that, had the disability, it was me. They could communicate. I was the only one in that room who could not. So I had an administrative assistant there with me. I said, how do you say sit down? And she said, go. Like this. So I went over, I blinked the lights, they all looked up, and I said, sit down. They all sat down. It was amazing. I was absolutely hooked. I tried to learn a lot of different languages. I tried German, I tried Spanish, and it was just too tough for me. But sign language, it was like poetry in motion. And I learned it like that. In fact, I teach a sign language class to this day in a local community college. But even more than that, what it did for me was to just tear down all the stereotypes and myths that I had in my head about what it meant to be deaf. And that was a very, very important piece. I stayed there for a number of years, and then I was recruited to an organization called the I Have a Dream Foundation. Now, some of you may have seen on 60 Minutes, a man by the name of Eugene Lang he was the graduation speaker at his elementary school, his alma mater. And he said, what can I say to really make a difference in the lives of these families who are here? And he stood up, he gave a little speech, and he made a pledge. He said, I will give every student in here a college scholarship for you to go to college. And there was so much celebration, there were tears, and he was asking himself, okay, I'm a businessman, I'm not gonna be able to do it myself, I have to hire people to make it work. And he started hiring project coordinators. The Whittier family here in Los Angeles, or in Pasadena actually, they decided they wanted to replicate the program and do the same thing in Los Angeles. So they took students, and these were students, these weren't top achievers. These were students who were very likely to drop out. It was in gang territories that they decided that these are the students that they're going to give the scholarship to. And I was one of the project coordinators that they chose to act as a liaison between the families, the schools, and the colleges. I can't even begin to tell you how that shaped my life. You know, I love the work. I went through from elementary school all the way up to college, and had to bury about 8 of them because of gang violence. And I was offered, after we got them all the way up, and some went to college, others didn't take advantage of the opportunity. But they asked me if I'd stay on and take another class, and I said absolutely not. You know, it's like raising your kids. You get them all the way through, you get them out of the house, and you're starting all over. No way. But I love the job. I love what it was that I was doing. So I transitioned out of the I Have a Dream Foundation into the World of Difference Institute. I've had friends tell me, boy, you can find jobs with the most interesting names. but the ADL, a World of Difference Institute, sponsored by the Anti-Defamation League, and it was a diversity training program. And we provided diversity training for college campuses, community-based organizations, law enforcement, you name it, and we provided the training to it. I was specifically over the Los Angeles area, schools, and the school districts. I would get calls all the time from administrators saying we're having issues on campus. White students are over here, African-American students are here, Asian-American students are here, and the Latino students are here. We want them to kind of mix in together. And I would ask a simple question. Well, you know, in your teacher's cafeteria, do the white teachers sit in one section, the teachers of color sit in another section, and where exactly do the classified staff sit? And where there's concern for that dynamic as they were for the students mixing it together. Easy but profound questions to ask. Loved it, loved the work that I did with ADL. I was sent to USC to do a workshop for the students there. And it was an experience. I had done workshops all over Los Angeles, all over the country actually. But when I started working with students at USC, it was a different experience. You know, they were so real, so raw. They put it out there, and we had some very real conversations. And I said, this is what I was meant to do. And I was with my boss. We were facilitating together. And I said, Marjorie, this is what I was put here to do. And she said, no, I feel it, Henry. I feel it. Went back. A month later, the position of Intercultural Affairs, the Director of Intercultural Affairs, was open right here at the university. And I saw it, and I went for it. And I got it. And they haven't been able to get rid of me since. You know, I loved what I do, and I love this university. You know, my grandfather was right. LMU is the big time, but not because of the pristine campus or the well-manicured lawns, but for the people. It's the people that really makes it special. When I got the agenda last night, and I didn't actually know who was going to be presenting tonight. I knew a couple of people, but I had no idea it was going to be this group. And each and every one of them, they really are very, very special to me in so many ways. I'm sorry, they are so special to me in so many ways. Nate is my brother from another mother.
Why don't you, brother?
McCain, Kamsi, Olivia, and Patrick. Patrick was one of the students in my class when he was, I guess, 18 years old.
Aww.
And I love this young man. He came in with such a passion. He wanted to make a difference. And he wanted to right all the wrongs, and he wanted them righted right then, you know. And I loved him for that. I loved him for his compassion. I loved him for his persistence. And but he learned that the race isn't given to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but he that endureth. And Patrick has not only endured, but he is still fighting the good fight. And I love him for that. He has his own little social justice warriors with him, Matthew and Maya, and he's teaching them what it means to live in a just society, and I love him for that. And quickly, because I know my time is coming to an end, Olivia. She is so special to me in so many different ways. Olivia was a student of mine also. And she took the intercultural practicum and she became an intercultural facilitator. She kept me organized, she kept me on track, she kept me focused, and she became the student facilitator for the program, and she was actually running it, and I was sort of sitting back. And I said, if ever I leave this institution and the program that I love so much, I want Olivia to run it, because I can't think of anybody who would do a better job than her. So Olivia, I thank you for the work that you've done with the program. And then I thank all of you for coming out and listening to our stories. I mean, for me, this is family reunion right now. and when I saw who was going to speak, I knew this was going to be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening. So thank you for coming out. I know it was a sacrifice for some of you, for a lot of you. And you could be at home watching the Lakers and the Mavericks, but I do appreciate you coming out and listening to our stories and how we make the pieces fit. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You have no idea how good that felt to hear your story. We've been waiting for you for a long time. So thank you, Rhonda Rosen, for gently twisting his arm. All right, let's keep this show going. So thank you so much, Henry, for sharing all of that. All right, so our next speaker is an LMU alumnus. So Makeen Yassar is a change agent, a poet, a political educator, and medical student currently attending Charles Drew University School of Medicine and Science in Los Angeles, California, as part of their inaugural class for their College of Medicine. Yassar is a class of 2020 alumnus where he earned a BS in Health and Human Sciences with a minor in African American Studies. A former intercultural facilitator, Yassar currently organizes local teach-ins on Black radical resistance through health and co-chairs the For Us All campaign, a national advocacy movement for the Social Mission Alliance, fighting for transformative health justice through social accountability within health professions, training institutions. Can you all please help me welcome Makeen Yassar.
All right, mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Folks hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Hearing the bio was interesting. I haven't had my bio read in a while, and I promise I wasn't trying to brag. It was mostly just to give an update for Henry, knowing that I was going to be speaking here tonight. So thank you, really appreciate you. First things first, I just wanted to address the elephant in the room. I know it's on everybody's minds in terms of the travesty of my facial hair. I typically am not one to shave, but I had to for the orientation. One of my orientations for my clinical rotations, we're getting mask fitted. And so there's been a little bit of grief there in terms of me losing my facial hair. But I think that's a part of life and a part of us navigating what it means to deal with things that are losses, and how do we manage to put the pieces back together, because there's a little bit of a fracturing there anytime we do go through grief. Just a little bit about myself. I am originally from Palmdale, California. No, there are no palm trees in Palmdale. And I know those who are laughing know. For those of you who aren't aware, Palmdale is a high desert suburb that is about an hour north here in LA County. My mom's originally from Los Angeles, Baldwin Village, Crenshaw area. My dad's originally from St. Louis. And this is home. When I was younger, we would spend our summers with our grandparents in the Baldwin Village area, also known as the Jungles. We would spend the weekends driving up and down between Palmdale, or even during the week. Actually, we were down in LA pretty often, as my mom was our primary caretaker for my grandparents, who had a plethora of health issues when I was younger. If you could think of a chronic illness between my grandparents, they probably had it. And so my mom, who was their only child, we would spend all that time driving up and down between the desert down to the city in order to take care of them. And my mom was truly the first person in my life to really model what it means to truly care for others. She did it through her actions, she did it through her love with between me and my brother. And you know, that included us being in doctor's offices all the time. Literally all the time, whether it be the pulmonologist, the cardiologist, the primary care doctor, the hospital, worst case, intensive care unit. We were in hospitals all the time growing up, and I like to say that those were my first shadowing experiences. So shout out to my grandparents for hooking that up for me. Shadowing does not come easy. And one of the doctors that left a really big impact on me was my grandmother's favorite doctor, Dr. William Cuddles. He was a black male physician who had his own offices around in the Crenshaw area. And my grandma absolutely loved Dr. Cuddles. She's like, oh, we're gonna see Dr. Cuddles. He had been her family care doctor for years. My mom had worked in his office, and he had this level of patience and temperament and kindness that was his aura. And you know, at that time, it was like those seeds were being planted for me in terms of, oh, this might be a career that I want to go into. If someone like Dr. Cuddles taking care of my grandmother, maybe this is an option. I completely forgot about all of that by the time I got to high school. And in between, it was funny, you know, because I came from a family that was very encouraging in terms of me going to college. So in my mind, I was like, okay, you're going to college, just figure out what you want to do in the in-between. I remember actually coming here to LMU when I was a kid. It was me, my grandma, and my mom. And my mom liked to drive us around different parts of LA, including like the marinas. You know, her and my grandmother really loved the water. And if you ask my grandma, she said in that moment while we were walking to see the bluff near the chapel, that I had said that I will go here one day.
Wow.
My mom disagreed. She said that never happened. But lo and behold, I actually did end up coming here. And by the time I was in high school, I wasn't initially going to pursue medicine, but I took an anatomy and physiology class my senior year, and that was enough for me to be like, oh, I actually have an affinity for this. I'm just extremely curious about the human body, and knowing that this is a career that is meant for caring for others and looking after others, I felt like, oh, this might be something that I want to do. When you're going through the application process for med school, one of the primary questions that they ask you, whether it be in your primary application or your secondary application or your interview, is the central question of why medicine? Funny, they actually advise you to not say that you're pursuing this career to want to care for people, which you would think would be a little concerning, hearing that other doctors don't want to hear that, but it's the general assumption that it's like, no, we know that you're here and that you want to care for other people, but why medicine for you? And I would say one of those moments that really cemented for me that I wanted to pursue medicine actually happened while I was a student here. And it wasn't necessarily something that happened on campus. One of the key formative reasons why I chose medicine was because heading into my sophomore year, we had a family friend of ours staying with us for the summer. Her name was Shelly. Shelly had 2 kids, Amir and Carson, and when we were younger, we would see them at my grandmother's place. And baby Carson at the time, and she was actually one of the, Shelly specifically, was one of the young people that my mom and grandma actually took care of when they were younger. Before my mom had me and my brother, she actually ran a daycare with my grandmother. So Shelly was one of her kids. And so they were staying with us in Palmdale. Amir, no longer a baby, was 11 years old. And he was the most rambunctious, wise guy. He was extremely bright, and he loved to let everybody know it. He also loved to wipe the floor with me and my brother as we were playing Mortal Kombat. And in our embarrassment, we never told anybody that we lost consistently to an 11-year-old at a video game that we should have won. I was 19 during the time. You weren't supposed to laugh at that. Grief. And Amir was extremely bright. And all Shelly wanted was for her baby to have a good future. And Amir was a chronic asthmatic. So what that means is, in general, he struggled with his asthma. He would have flare-ups and asthma attacks pretty frequently. And even while he was staying with us, there was a time where we had to take him to the emergency room because he didn't have insurance. In those moments, and in those conversations with Shelly as I was starting this journey, this pre-med journey to where I am now, it was in those moments where I was like, I think I am on the path that I need to be on. If I could help people in my life like Amir receive care and make sure that they have the best care that they could possibly get, then I would be living a good life. Amir passed away if I could do the math, in 2017, this month. So it's been about 8 years since he passed away. He died from the asthma attack while I was a student. And part of that was he had an allergic reaction to something that they had given him in order to try and treat his attack at Children's Hospital. And I was devastated. I had not lost someone in that way in my life up to that point, let alone someone so young. And it really shattered a part of me. The way I found myself coping was to completely dive into the mission and journey that I was on in order to get into med school. So I just completely threw myself into any and all projects that I could get my hand on. That worked out for a while. I actually talked about it at this event, my senior year, in terms of all the things I was involved with and how I crashed. But one thing that, upon reflecting, that was a life raft for me heading into my senior year, knowing that, not even knowing that I was still processing the events of what had happened on that day, was being an intercultural facilitator and Henry. So I'm gonna take a moment to just pull up a chair. Hi, Henry. How you feeling?
Okay.
There sounds like some nervousness in that, okay. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for allowing me to be an intercultural facilitator. I remember heading into my senior year, and I mean, you know, you can feel free to say how you want, but it felt like you were recruiting me. It felt like you really wanted me to be in heaven. And, you know, initially at the time I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in F. But what I will say is that as I was heading through that very difficult time and that very difficult year, that the spaces that you helped introduce me to and helped craft in our community through the programs and the panels and the talks, it provided me a space and ability to reflect on myself and my journey and who I was becoming and the things that I had not yet processed up to that point. When I was in high school, one of the things we talked about before, where I was really wanting to be a writer, and by the time I was at LMU and doing all these things, and I was like, I need to become a doctor, I need to become a doctor, I had kind of let that to the side. But the writing is what saved me. The story itself is what saved me. Doing these things is what saved me emotionally. Because when I crashed hard. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I could barely speak. I was stuttering. Nate was there, and he was a huge supporter in that time, so thank you, Nate, for that. And I wasn't necessarily sure when I crashed if I would be able to do any more things with the IFs. There were many things I wanted to do with the IFs, like when we had to talk with Ijomo Luo, I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And you mentioned this talk, and I was like, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it. And then you mentioned to protect and serve, and I was like, oh, I really don't know if I can do that. I really didn't want to do that, but we did. And yeah, you provided space for me to process those things, and I just wanted, from the bottom of my heart, to thank you for that. I am only here today to thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you, McKean. As a reminder to folks, we do have boxes of Kleenex around the room. I'm going to need one myself. Excuse me for a second. There you go. There's plenty to go around. There should be some in the back of the room as well. Okay. Thank you, McKean, so much. Can we hear it one more time for McKean? I've also been detecting a theme for grandparents, by the way, and I've been catching that as well, so shout out to grandparents out there. Our next speaker, his name is Dr. Nathan Sessoms. Dr. Nathan Sessoms is a clinical assistant professor in LMU's Department of Sociology, and is also the principal and CEO of Success Beyond Measure, Incorporated, a diversity and educational equity consulting firm that provides support to community-based and nonprofit organizations, for-profit entities, and academic institutions interested in combating systemic racism and creating equitable outcomes for all. A native of Cleveland, Ohio, he has conducted research on race relations at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, contributed to several National Science Foundation funded reports, and published in several peer-reviewed journals, including Urban Geography, The Professional Geographer, and Fu. Dr. Sessoms possesses a wide range of experiences in urban planning, community development, and nonprofit program management. Additionally, he is the former director of the Office of Black Student Services here at LMU, where he has also worked closely with the university's Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, Jewish, and Muslim communities while assisting the campus in navigating the realities of race and racism. Can you all please help me welcome Dr. Nathan Sessoms. That's my tissue.
Yeah, sure.
I'll take it.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good
Good
evening.
evening.
This is very much a reunion. I just want to begin by saying that I actually am the one that recruited McKean to be an education. That was to get that straight. I thought a lot about what I wanted to say tonight. And I guess I'll begin by sharing briefly how I arrived at LMU. I'm from Cleveland. Excuse me, I came to Los Angeles by way of the University of Southern California, where I worked on my doctorate, finished up, and then I worked in community development for an organization called the Brotherhood Crusade, which is in South Central Los Angeles, not too far from Fremont. And I just wanted to shout out Fremont for that. And in that role, we were doing a lot of gang reduction youth development work, a lot of connecting with students, a lot of, one of the schools where I worked, Horace Mann Middle School, which feeds Crenshaw, had a 59% foster youth population. So you can kind of understand the kinds of stories that students were dealing with. And so I came to LMU as the director of the Office of Black Student Services. And it was the greatest job ever. Really enjoyed myself, learned a lot. I came to campus 3 days, 3 days after the murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson. And so my first project was to galvanize the Black community, students who I did not know at the time, faculty, staff who I did not know, around the tragic events there. And I quickly realized that not only was I responsible for galvanizing the Black community, I was galvanizing the entire campus community, which was kind of interesting. I ended up leaving LMU a few days after the murder of George Floyd. And so my time in that role was really, in between those times, there was a lot of challenges in the mainstream. Students were responding to police brutality. Students were, in many ways, pushing the university to be true to its mission and holding it accountable in the form of demands, in the form of programs. Protect and Serve was one of them. And there were challenges throughout those years because I don't quite know if we were always speaking the same language. So what I learned from that? I attended LMU, I've probably been to about 4 or 5 LMU Speaks over the years. And I first started coming to the event because I would feel sometimes depleted. And what meant a lot to me was hearing the students' stories. We have a lot of resources on this campus. I've had the opportunity to fly to Ghana with students. There are grant opportunities, but I think our greatest resource is our students and their stories. And when I would listen to the students and I would leave, I would feel like that's what I'm fighting for. I mentioned there were some challenging times during my days in student affairs, and LMU Speaks was certainly became part of my normal routine. But I'm here because of Henry Ward. And man, do I have some stories about him. I'm not gonna tell you all of them. But Henry played this mind job on me when I first arrived, and he said, once I got past my probationary period, Henry said, okay, I need 5 years out of you. If you give me 5, we're good. And there were times where I'd stagger in his office and be like, all right, man, I gotta go. This is it. I've given you 2 days. No, I've given you a couple of years, but it's time. No, 5 years, 5 years. You're 5 years, you gotta commit to 5 years. And so, I'll be honest, I haven't talked to Henry very much in the last few years, but I haven't talked, it's not that there's a problem, the challenge is that Henry didn't come through on his side of a wager we had. and the wager was that if I had to give my 5, and I gave 6. I gave 6. But Henry would say, if you leave here, you have to stay within the university confines. And it just so happened that it worked out that way. Henry's part of the deal was that if I did that, he had to get braids. I'll let you all do the judging. Something's not right. Part of the reason LMU Speaks has been successful, I like to think, is because of what Henry poured into the students. And you heard what McKean shared about his story. I had a unique seat in the room because I watched Henry prepare students. And Henry would become different characters, right? There's one character that everyone needs to know about, and that character is, and I'm serious, is known as the participant from hell.
Yeah, we know about
And I would, Henry is this wise sage, and he would sit back and, listen to students and then give them very direct feedback. And then he would morph into this person and he would say, someone please kick him out. Like, who is this person? Why is he so rude and disrespectful? But he was really getting the students ready and preparing them for not only certain events, but I think really for the rest of their lives. There's so many stories I can tell you. So many stories. I really wanted to say thank you to you, Henry, for pouring into me. I do expect you to come through on your side as well. There were probably a few times, more than a few, that I was probably gonna be tossed out on the streets of Westchester, out of the university, for something I was going to say in a meeting when I was ticked off, and Henry would say, "Oh, don't go there. Just be encouraged." And I'd be like, "You be encouraged." No, I'd be really upset. But I'm just grateful and thankful that I got a chance to learn from you and annoy you as much as I did. I know that I'm a better person and professional for having engaged with you. So thank you all.
One more time for Dr. Nate Sessom. Participant from hell, huh? I thought I knew you.
There are other stories. That was a lot for me.
And hopefully we'll keep it going. We have plenty more speakers to hear from. So, our very next speaker, Patrick Furlong. Patrick Furlong is the director of the Pam Reckner Center for Service in Action and a two-time LMU alum. Patrick is originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but is proud to call LA home. In his personal life, he's a huge Dodgers fan, he enjoys traveling, and is the proud parent of Matthew and Maya, and he has the dad jokes to prove it. Can you help me welcome Patrick Furlong?
Nate spoke earlier about coming into this space and getting refreshed, and when Henry spoke, he referred to me as a young man, and I gotta tell you, on this campus, not that many people talk to me as a young man, so I feel replenished and refreshed right here just for that alone. As was mentioned in the bio, my name is Patrick Furlong. I'm the director of the Pam Reckner Center for Service in Action here on campus, and I do indeed hail from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So is there anybody else out here that's from Albuquerque? Okay, so this is how it goes every single time. And my wife is from Boston. And so usually when she says she's from Boston, people are like, "Oh, Boston." And they go on. And they're like, "Are you from there?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "You from LA?" I go, "No." And they finally say, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Albuquerque." And almost every single time the response is, "Oh." And I'm like, "I get it. You've probably never even seen my state. We have a whole history that you can Google if you don't believe me about people not understanding our state is a state. That's why we have USA on our license plate. Only state that does that, but that's another talk for another time." But I want to speak about my time as a student. And when you work at the university you went to as a student, you actually spend a lot of your time trying to distance that student piece and trying to focus on being the professional here in it. But to be a kid from Albuquerque, New Mexico that came out to LA, who was the only person from the state of New Mexico in his incoming class, it was hard to put the pieces together. And it was hard to figure out how to navigate this beautiful city that, as you all see, I now proudly call home and love. But it was just a beast, culturally, geographically, everything, you know? In New Mexico and Albuquerque, we got 2 interstates, I-25, I-40, that's it. They cross each other, easy to move. Time I went downtown and I was like, I just got on the 90 to go to the 405, to the 10, to the 110, to the 101. How is this happening, right? And so I was lost and trying to figure stuff out, and I was a freshman in Rosecrans. Shout out to anyone who's lived in Rosecrans, it's a journey. And when I was there, I had an RA that took a particular interest in me, and an RA who really cared about me and got to know me, and he introduced me to an experience that would not only alter my first year of college, but it would really, you know, give me a framework. Some of us in this room might say a design for living, a pattern for interpreting our reality. Maybe this sounds familiar to some folks right here. I didn't know what I was getting into, but what I knew was I had an RA who cared about me, who said, you're coming on this retreat with me. And I was told that there was this guy, Henry Ward, running that retreat. And so I was like, okay. And they said, he's pretty cool, you'll like him. So within minutes of the retreat, I was hooked. You know, I was doing all the things one learns with Henry Ward, and any of us who have been students or colleagues, we know it, right? I talked about design for living, a pattern for interpreting reality. When Henry said that, all of us in this row mouthed it together, and we're like, yep, we know the line, we got it. Oops and ouch, about how we kind of engage in difficult dialogues and what things look like. And I think what I learned most was this idea that language and the actions I needed to support a more diverse, a more equitable, and a more inclusive community all around me were given to me. And I was told, this is now your responsibility to help make this so. And so it was an incredible experience, right? Freshman year, first semester, wow. And then I went home to the Chicagoland area where my extended family is, another home for me, to visit my family on Christmas break. And that's the part of the story that kind of adds a wrinkle in here, because I was surrounded by a number of family members who, to put it very plainly for everyone, are racist. And I had navigated that my entire life and never knew what to do with it. But here I am, trained by Henry, having gone through, we'd have these Saturday classes in addition to the retreat. And so I was equipped and ready to address that racism within my family, right? And I didn't. I sat there day after day, hearing different racist remarks made, and I said nothing. I did nothing. And I got back to LA. I landed late at night. I think the first thing I did was opened up a computer and I wrote this email to Henry, really anguished, full of shame, saying, you trained me. You gave me all these skills, and I know the responsibility on my shoulders, and I sat there and I did nothing. And I'm just so sorry to have failed you, and I'm so embarrassed to have failed you, and I'm so angry at myself knowing what was needed of me in that moment. And you know, Henry's response, it won't surprise anyone in this room, but for a first-year student navigating life, it floored me. First thing he did was he expressed care and concern for me. He wrote back and said, we gotta get together and we gotta meet, because everything you had learned and everything you have experienced with me and your peers, if you navigated that back home, I can't imagine how you feel right now. And I can't imagine how harmful that was for you. So I want to get eyes on you and I want to see how you're doing. And I did not think I deserved that at all. He told me when we got together to be gentle with myself, and at the same time offered to reflect with me, to hold me accountable to how I would get better the next time. And I think in our society in 2025, we really struggle with grace and accountability coming together. And he delivered both, and he taught me how to learn from a mistake rather than dwell in it. And it's a lesson I try and impart upon people in my own career and in my own vocation as a father now at the same time. And so I just got to tell you all that over the years, you know, my engagement with Henry and his work has deepened. I am so blessed to be one of the folks who knows him as student and colleague. And my confidence to share the wisdom and testimony with others deepened and improved as well. I've recognized the privilege that I hold as a white male when I walk into different spaces. I've recognized that privilege when I get into a space of people who look just like me, where sometimes the words come out a little more loose than they might otherwise when we're in shared company. And I've learned how important it is for me to really kind of advocate for and speak plainly to the truths that I have learned about the value of the diverse communities and diverse systems that we are trying to design together. And so I have that obligation to challenge those narratives when they pop up, and I learned to do it, including the next Christmas break the year after that with my family. So thank you for teaching me on that right there. What I'll say as I kind of wrap it up here is we all know that wide-scale system change remains needed in 2025, just as much as it was in 2020, just as much as it was in the 1960s, just as much. It is needed more than ever. And we all need to work and advocate for that large-scale systems change. And what Henry helps me do is not just to remember to engage in that fight, but also remember that day to day, we have to show up and remind each other just what and who we are fighting for. It's my opinion that we have collectively lost sight and forgotten that we belong to one another. None of us are excused from the fights, big or small, to honor and celebrate the dignity of all people. Said I wasn't going to cry. McKean was like, here's a tissue. And I'm going to still hold to it. And I see Terry smiling at me like, yeah, you know you're going to cry, fool. But I brought my son here today, who's 9-year-old, for a couple of reasons. One, he went over and grabbed a bunch of root beer behind my back, so I see why he was motivated to be here. But I want him to know that when I talk about Henry Ward, because I talk about you, sir, with my family a fair amount, I talk about that experience and what it has meant to me now some 20 years later. And I want him to have your face to accompany those stories. I want him to be able to see that. But I also brought him here to witness this.
Yeah.
All of us who are here in some form or another, because we have been loved by you and we love you. And I want him to understand and witness that your love and wisdom is a powerful message for him and for me, that a life well lived is one that fights for, celebrates, and honors the dignity of other people. So I'm not going to pull up a chair. McKean already stole that one from me right there. But I do just want to tell you, Henry, you know, I look back at 18-year-old me, and I wonder where I would have been if not for the generous, patient, and pointed love of mentors like you. You talk about how special this place is with the people, and we are indeed blessed that we've got you and other folks who pour that love into people. You helped a scared kid from New Mexico start to put the pieces together and think about what matters in this world and why. And I feel I have a sense of obligation now through my work in the Center for Service and Action and my work as a father to honor that love that you poured into me and so many here. So I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, and I thank you all.
Can we hear it one more time for Patrick? I don't know, I'm starting to detect a pattern here. Right, so for this year's LMU Speaks, there's a couple of first-time things that are going on. So for the first time, we brought back a previous speaker from LMU Speaks, McKean. And in another first, we identified a student to be one of our speakers this year who happens to be studying abroad. So it was a little bit tough for him to get here from London. So he's not going to be here, but he was kind enough to submit a video. So in a moment, I'm going to set up that video, but I think it's still appropriate to still formally introduce our next speaker. So his name is Kamzi Enzaribe. So Kamzi is a junior at Loyola Marymount University pursuing a major in finance. Beyond his academic pursuits, he finds joy in curating unique experiences through his vintage and streetwear apparel business the Altius Collective. When he's not immersed in business endeavors or academics, he enjoys listening to music, hanging out with friends, or playing sports. He's excited to continue his academic journey, fueled by his unwavering curiosity, commitment to excellence, and desire to contribute positively to both his educational and professional spheres. In a moment, I'm going to present to you Kamzi and Zaribe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kamzi Zaribe. I'm a junior finance major at Loyola Marymount University. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, but right now I'm studying abroad in London for the entirety of my spring semester. That's why I'm not physically in the room with you all today, but even from across the world, I still feel incredibly blessed and honored to have been selected as a speaker for this event. I'm so excited to share my thoughts and story with you all today. Over the years, I've come to see my identity as a collection of shifting pieces, constantly rearranging with each experience. Two pieces that have always stood out, no matter how the rest have changed, are adversity and change itself. These forces have shaped me, breaking me apart at times, but also revealing the core of who I am. Some of these pieces come in the form of places I've called home, others as people who have influenced my journey. And through every challenge, I've learned that life will always demand growth, asking me to put myself back together. When my mom was 16, she moved from Nigeria to the United States all by herself. Given her circumstances, there were certain things that were out of her control, such as the demographic of people her son grew up around. For myself, growing up in predominantly white areas meant navigating things like microaggressions, stereotyping, and moments of feeling invisible. However, on the second Sunday of every month, all these feelings would melt away when my mom would take me to her Igbo Catholic Mass. Stepping into Nigerian church felt like a second home. You know, the sounds of Igbo and Pidgin English, the aroma of jollof rice in the air, and the laughter echoing through gatherings of families and friends. These experiences became more than just moments of comfort. They became pieces of my identity, helping me understand where I belonged in a world where I often felt out of place. In many ways, I was constantly assembling different aspects of myself. The Nigerian traditions my mother instilled in me, the realities of growing up in a predominantly white community, and the personal struggle that came with being the child of a single mother. Each experience, no matter how challenging, was a piece of a larger puzzle, shaping the way I navigate the world. But life rarely follows a straight path, and mine has been no exception. My early encounters with difference, both subtle and overt, impacted not only my understanding of the world, but also how I moved through it. One memory that stands out in particular to me took place on Father's Day in kindergarten many years ago. I clearly remember putting on my backpack and grabbing my lunch. When I got to school, I noticed that all my classmates had their father's hands in theirs. From there, the teacher called roll and asked that we introduce our dads to the class. When the teacher called my name, the class fell silent. I was the only one whose father wasn't there. You know, thinking on the fly, I told the class that my dad was out of town on business, doing something important. The fact of the matter was, there was no dad. It was just me and my mom. Now, I've never told my mom this story, but somehow I feel like she knows it. You know, growing up with just my mom, I learned to navigate the world in my own way. She's my biggest protector, my biggest motivator. She's always pushing me to overcome my boundaries. But despite her support, I often found myself seeking something more, an outside influence that could guide me through the more subtle challenges of growth. That came when I met Henry Ward during my time at LMU. At a point where I was still finding my place, unsure of direction, Henry came into my life unexpectedly. It wasn't a grand gesture or anything life-altering at first, but His steady presence quickly became a pivotal part of my journey. In many ways, Henry stepped into a role similar to that of a father figure. Someone who saw not only my potential, but also pushed me to become the best version of myself. He didn't offer flashy advice or make bold claims. He led by example, showing me what discipline, consistency, and growth really looked like. Through his quiet yet impactful encouragement, I discovered a new belief in my own strength and realized that the path I was looking for had always been within me. Henry didn't just see me for who I was in the moment. He saw the person I could become. He encouraged me with positive affirmations, reminding me that my setbacks did not define me, and that resilience was built through persistence. More than that, he showed me what it meant to be accountable, not just in my ambitions, but in my everyday actions. Whether it was the way he balanced his commitments with unwavering focus, or the way he held himself to high standards without seeking recognition. Henry's example challenged me to demand more from myself. His influence wasn't just in words, but in the way he lived, making me realize that growth isn't about waiting for the right moment. It's about creating it. What I admire most about Henry is how he pushes people to grow, not by criticizing them, but by believing in what they're capable of. For me, that challenge came when I was preparing for the American Association of Colleges and Universities conference, where I had to present my story of self. I will not lie, it was daunting. I struggled to pinpoint the moments that truly defined me. Connecting the dots between my past and my present felt overwhelming. When I sent Henry my first draft of my speech, he sent me right back to the drawing board with the sharp, "Now I know you can do better than this." There was no bullshitting Henry. He had high expectations, and he made sure I met them. Writing this speech wasn't just about telling my story. It was about understanding it. It forced me to think about who I am, what shaped me, and why it all matters. But in the end, the most important part of this experience wasn't how well the speech went at the conference. It was the first time I rehearsed it for my intercultural facilitators group on a Saturday morning. I remember standing in front of everyone, speaking my truth, and then looking at Henry, seeing the emotion hit him first and then myself shortly after. In that moment, everything we had worked through, all the challenges and expectations, it all clicked. We were both in that moment, and I felt it. When Henry and I embraced at the end of my speech, standing in the office kitchen, just beyond the small circle where I had been presenting, it wasn't about the speech anymore. It was about the journey we'd gone through together. The weight of sharing something so personal, of seeing its impact on someone who had been there through it all, made the moment overwhelming. The process of refining my words, confronting my emotions, and allowing myself to be seen had been just as important as the speech itself. That embrace wasn't just a reaction. It was a recognition of everything we had carried and released together. Henry has been instrumental in helping me understand who I truly am. He's pushed me to take a closer look at my identity and think about where I've come from and where I want to go. Through our conversations, I've learned the value of being authentic, of owning my own story and using it to inspire others. In Henry, I found a mentor, a role model, and a reminder that I am capable of more than I often give myself credit for. He has shown me what it means to live with purpose, to lead with compassion, and to never stop striving for excellence. And for that, I am truly, truly grateful. Thank you.
All right, our last but certainly not least speaker, Olivia Rodriguez. Olivia Rodriguez is the coordinator of the Intercultural Facilitator Program here at Loyola Marymount University. where she empowers student leaders to navigate critical, cultural, and social issues. A proud alumna of the program, Oli, as she likes to be referred to, brings a deep commitment to fostering intercultural understanding shaped by her experiences as an English major here at LMU and her MA in social and cultural analysis of education from Cal State Long Beach. As a multiracial and multicultural woman, she is dedicated to creating inclusive spaces that uplift voices at the margins and foster meaningful connections across differences. Please help me welcome Oli Rodriguez.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ray, was I supposed, so the assignment was to include Henry in our story? Hi, everyone. My name is, as Ray offered, Olivia Rodriguez. A little uncomfortable hearing my government name at LMU at this point. When I was a student here, I did go by Olivia. And so these two gentlemen who knew me back when I was a student, they still keep that, they keep Olivia alive, and I appreciate that. I'm a 2015 alumna of the university and an alumna of the Intercultural Facilitator Program. And I admit I was a little nervous. I'm a little nervous standing up here, but I do know that more than a few of you in this space have been impacted and forever changed. One or both, the Intercultural Practicum or the Intercultural Facilitators Program. So in that way, I'm kind of comforted. I do feel like, in a way, whether I've met you personally or I've actually been able to kind of sit down and have coffee with you, I feel like we are, in a way, connected. Right? So last year, I got to kind of carry a little bit of the torch, and I got to work with our student speakers for this event. Mm-hmm. I also got to, a couple years prior, the last 2 years, because this event was born after I graduated. And so when I came back in 2021, I got to enjoy it as an audience member. And then last year when I got to work with our two student speakers, Citlali and Brandon, it was a journey, and I know the work and the time and effort that they put in to crafting their stories and just finding the strength and courage to share those pieces of themselves with you all. And what a special moment that was. This event is so special, and I think, Nate, you said it beautifully, right? You just leave so inspired, right? I mean, it just pours so much into you as an educator, as someone who's is blessed to get to work with change agents. And LMU, the students here at LMU are no joke. I think they just come just ready to be change agents. And I remember the last time, I don't know if I was just because Henry calls me a mama hen, but I was kind of nervous, right, seeing them go out. I knew they were going to do great. And I got a couple glasses of wine in me. And I was so inspired at the end. I walked right up to Rhonda and I said, I think I could do this next year. And she said, really? Oh God. Rhonda.
Sign her up.
Yep. So Rhonda doesn't forget. And Rhonda doesn't care how many glasses of wine are speaking for you in that moment. But what I'm grateful for is that I guess at some point in her knowing Henry made a similar promise. I'm inspired by the strong arm Rhonda has. I was CC'd on the email that was mentioned earlier, and I think I might print it and frame it because I am inspired by the way that you took him to task and held him accountable to that promise years ago. Maybe after he'd had a couple of glasses of wine. But, and thank you, right, Rhonda and Ray and Henry for all of the effort and the energy that you put to making this event year after year after year the special occasion that it is. It's kind of like you know, when we were talking about what the theme of this year could be, putting the pieces together made just a lot of sense, right? Based on the conversation that we were having. And John, thank you, John, because we were in that meeting together, and so it was like, it clicked, right? And then it was the puzzle, right? The marketing started to practically build itself, right, in that space. So with the puzzle, and I think it's just because the posters have been glaring at me, as the reality started to set in of the responsibility that Two Wine Olivia signed herself up for. I started to think about puzzles, and puzzles are pretty special to me. When I first started dating my partner, Chris, about 9 years ago, we went through a whole phase of puzzles, right? We have a bunch that are framed on our wall. We have a lot that we just didn't, we ran out of wall space, so we just put them back in the box. And ironically, I think it was when we got to the pandemic, we lost interest in puzzles. And so the cool thing about the way that puzzle pieces connect, we were still kind of able to stay kind of physically connected with some members of our community because they knew that we had a bunch of puzzles, and so we'd set up this little check-in, check-out system. So they would come and pick up some puzzles. Yeah, I mean, but I had to, of course, walk out, drop it on the porch inside, and so they'd come a couple days later after they've done the puzzles and then switch them out for new ones. And so I was thinking about that there's a method to doing a puzzle, right? What do? You kind of spread it all out. You start with the frame, right? You take out all those frame pieces. And maybe along the way, you're starting to sort the other pieces that start to look familiar, and then there's some pieces that are maybe like, oh, I know what this piece is going to be. I know this is definitely one of those guiding stars pieces, not in the frame, but I'm going to put you aside because I'm going to revisit you, right? Okay, so let's start with the frame. That frame is like our foundation, right? I come from a very diverse background. I was born to a father who immigrated to this country from Mexico. And man, that family rolls deep. By now, I think I have like 80 cousins. That's not an exaggeration. My grandmother had 13 kids, right there on the farm in Palo Verde, in Guanajuato, Mexico. And the lessons that you learn just growing up with the cousins, the cousins that are like your brothers and sisters, right? That just, they teach you how to have thick skin, right? They teach you that you give without expectation of even so much as a thank you, right? You say hi to people, right? That's something that is very big in our culture. You pass someone, you say hi to them, right? I used to think that our family was a lot bigger because my uncles, going around in Mexico, my uncles and my aunts say, oh, hola, ¿cómo estás? And I'm like, oh, is that a cousin too? Like, no, it's not. You just, that's what we do. And that's a value that I really love and cherish, and I try to keep with me, especially when I'm navigating new spaces. My mother is variations of Caucasian with European white, and her father, with whom we were sadly estranged, is Filipino. And so I have these different ingredients that make me who I am. I didn't even know that I had Filipino as a significant ingredient until I was in high school. And then things started to make a lot of sense that happened in my childhood. Because now, as I understand it, Filipinos kind of have a nose for other Filipinos. And so they would come up to me and ask me if I'm Filipino. And now I get to say that I am, and sometimes they'll give me a hug, and I'm kind of like family, and then sometimes they'll speak to me in Tagalog. And then it just stops, so I have to burst the bubble a little bit. When my mom and my parents separated and divorced, I was like about 6, 7 years old when my mom remarried. And that brought a whole other family into my world. And they wrapped their arms around me and raised me, right? And that's a whole other culture, right? Living in Texas at the time. And what I didn't realize, too, was just kind of probably me internalizing moments of racism that I didn't quite see or understand, right? When you're walking with interracial parents, right? My white presenting mother and a black man. Sometimes, you know, my aunties would take me out. People would ask me if I'm lost. I'm okay, where's my parents? This is my aunt, you know. And so I have this amazing sister, you know, who taught me truly what it is to fall in love at first sight. Right? I remember holding her in my arms when I was 15. So this is my framework. This is kind of, these are my roots. When you start to put, you have the frame complete, then we start to sift through the other pieces of the puzzle. And some pieces just don't make any sense, right? You forget to look, when you're looking at, I mean, look, and I'll say it, I hope it's not divisive. I look at the picture on the puzzle, like at the box, right? That is, thank you. I don't think it's cheating, right? So like I'm actually looking at it, but sometimes when you look at a picture, you miss that someone is wearing like a bigger blue jacket or something, right? And so you're like, what is this weird piece that doesn't seem like it fits into the bigger picture here, right? But then you put those aside, you save those to the end. So let's go back to those guiding pieces, right? That North Star, that guiding star. For me, it's Henry. Okay, look.
You can do it.
I'm already a mess. These fellas wrecked me already. So I'm going to try very hard to kind of get through and not take it too slow, because I know that Henry really needs to see Luka Doncic. He's a guy who plays a sport of the basketball variety, and I understand that it's a very significant game, and I understand that at this point I'm standing in between Henry's recliner and Luka. Did I say Luka? Okay, Luka Doncic, thank you. So full respect of what we need to kind of get to, but when I started here, and I think kind of very similarly, right, to some of the stories that have been shared, I was a little lost, okay? I was just starting to process my mixed race identity. It's not even the sad part, but and I found my way into EIS. Not because I actually knew about EIS, I knew that they were hiring, and I got hired as a front desk student assistant. And I think I remember going around as a mixed race individual, didn't know really which office I belonged in, right? And so I just went into all of them. I just opened doors, okay, let's go in, and I introduced myself, and I think the last person I met was Henry. And from that first conversation, he saw something in me. And thus changed my entire life, right? The person that I am today does not exist without him. He's a part of my DNA. He's the voice that I hear whenever I'm confronted with any kind of moment of joy, hiccup, confusion, whatever it is, right? He's someone that I channel and usually call, right? So I'm going to kind of maybe share, because I also have stories for days, but I'm going to kind of share a couple of lessons, right? Because when you put that piece down, other things start to make sense. And he's helped me make sense of a lot of stuff that shouldn't make sense. Good is the enemy of great. It's the number one thing that he tells all of his students. It has helped me always hold myself to the potential that he has always held me at. It helps me hold my students to that same standard. And when I do something that I think is great, that I'm excited about, that I share with him, that he gets to see, and he said, that was good, man. I'm like, dang. Because I know what's coming after that is that it could be great, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's something that I will always value. Say what you mean, and mean what you say. Before I met my beloved, with whom I've been with for 9 years now, there was someone else that I was dating. And we were kind of in the phases of like dating, not really like official yet. And I had already met Henry and I was a student. And I remember going into his office the weekend after we became a unit, but official, as they say. I went into, and he had done it in such a nice and thoughtful way. He took me to the Hollywood Bowl, and he's I think he like previewed the songs that they were going to be performing or something, and one of them was just like my best friend. And I don't remember who sang it, who was there, but he identified that as the time that he was going to kind of ask me to be like his official, his like partner. But his words were like, "Will you be like my best friend, right? Like I really want you to be my person here, right?" And so I was so excited to go and tell Henry the next week, I have a boyfriend. And I recounted what happened, and it was definitely one of those that was good moments. Except it was like, well, he did say best friend, Olivia. Like he's my boyfriend. That's your boyfriend. And that's kind of a funny moment that I think about here and there, right? But also one that I'm able to channel in like these really critical moments when you gotta say the hard stuff. You gotta have those really uncomfortable conversations, right? If you really are striving for the results that you want, not just for yourself, but in the world, you have to say what you mean. And to be an honorable person with integrity, you have to mean what you say, right? Oh gosh, and I have so many. I have so many more. There was a piece to my puzzle here at LMU. And a part of you even kind of served as pieces around that area of my puzzle, right? When I first came, I was hired in a different position. It was an intern position, and I learned a lot about myself on that journey, kind of getting to where I am today, because where I am today is not where I started, right? The interim director position of an office, I feel like I went through the motions of applying for the permanent directorship because I felt this pressure that I didn't know how to respond to, and I really didn't know how to advocate for myself in a way that kind of allowed myself to set some boundaries, right? To tell myself that it was okay to admit that I was trying to make a puzzle piece fit where it didn't belong, right? Where this piece, it exists, right? It belongs here, but not in this particular place. And I remember the conversations we had in that year, where we really kind of named it but didn't. We talked about it. And ultimately, I think it's just coming into this place that I still carry with me, where it's okay to walk away, right? It's okay to walk away and spread your wings, fly off a different branch, right? You're going to find your place. It's okay to say that this place isn't it, right? And he supported me through all of that, right? So I could go on and on and on. But you see the torch that I'm carrying today, leading these programs, guiding students in the way that he guided me, leading these programs that he started that have impacted, again, more than a few people in this room, right, who are here today and have directly attributed their experiences with this man and this program, right? When students come to my office, whether it's just to check in, whether it's to release a little bit of emotion, whether it's to seek advice, I feel myself standing on his shoulders. I channel the advice that he always knew how to give me, the advice that he somehow always had in his back pocket, right? Because I've sent those emails to you, Patrick. I've made those phone calls too. The phone calls where I'm like, I'm not doing enough, or I don't know how to make sense of this, but I know it's not fair, right? He knows how to prioritize you as a human, as someone he has poured into, as someone he has loved, as a piece very much that has become a part of his puzzle. And then he knows how to work with you to seek accountability and then seek change, right? I feel the shoulders that I stand on every day, and I'm blessed, I'm so blessed that I get to experience this full circle moment. Henry is a humble man, and I think that there's kind of, as we shrink into the people that know him even deeper, that humility is, well, okay, I'll share the story. And I guess I'm going to leave you with this last bit. Also a lesson, and I think a page out of his book that I try to channel, particularly, like I said, when I'm speaking with students. You know, as the program grows and enters its kind of new era, it's already in its new era, but it's, you know, as we're doing things, as we're going into spaces, creating spaces, impacting others and inspiring others to do this work, you know. People come up to me and they very much talk about how they were impacted by the work that our students are doing. And, you know, what they don't know is the work that they put into it, right? And so, and I say this jokingly because this is something that we do in his office all the time when we're kind of planning things, and if I offer a nugget that he likes, right, and it kind of fits into the program or it fits into the speech or whatever it is, he'll say, "Oh my God, I'm so glad I thought of this." You know? So that's something that I look forward to, kind of when people come to me and honor the work that the students are doing, that this program has done. I look forward to proudly standing up and saying, "Thank you, I'm so glad that I thought of it." But I'm going to let you kind of wrap up this program, Ray, so that Henry can go and sit with Luca.
Thank you, Olivia. One more time for Olivia, please. So before we officially conclude today's program, I do have some quick words to share as well. So in case you haven't figured it out, this year's LMU Speaks has been a tribute and a heartfelt thank you to our colleague and friend, Henry Ward. Henry, since LMU Speaks began back in 2017, you have contributed tremendously to this program. You've helped identify student speakers with obviously amazing stories, and in turn, you've given the LMU community a golden opportunity to listen to our students. That's my bread and butter, man. I sometimes think I should have worked for student affairs. I'm a student engagement librarian. We speak the same language. So I have no idea how much I appreciate that. And clearly, your impact goes beyond our students. Tonight, we heard amazing stories from faculty, from staff, and alumni who have also felt your support. The goal of LMU Speaks has been to bring the LMU community together, and this would have been impossible without you.
Yeah.
On behalf of everyone who has ever been involved with LMU Speaks, thank you, Henry.